The Grand is a 2007 film directed by Zach Penn. It's written by Penn and Matt Bierman, and we have a great cast, including, to name just a few, Woody Harrelson, Cheryl Hines, Romano, Judy Greer, Estelle Harris. Great cast, great performances. I applaud the creativity, but I didn't enjoy it. And part of that's down to personal preference, part of it's not. And this is an improv film, which is quite interesting, where, as far as I know, the characters were only given scenarios, brief scripts, and something else as well that I think was quite interesting, but it's it's not really a spoiler, but I'll mention it at the end just in case you don't want to know. And it's about this poker tournament in this Las Vegas hotel, and it focuses primarily on Harrelson's character, Jack Faro, and he's a very interesting character. I won't give too much away about him, but he's certainly a well-written character, and he wants to keep his family's casino open, so he really wants to win the $10 million prize, and of course we have other players as well who are all interested in winning. And it's filmed as a kind of mockumentary or TV show where the participants are talking to the camera and then they're following them around, and it jumps around too much. This is the bit where I don't think it works well. And the reason why it's partly a personal preference is because I don't care about poker. I don't understand it. I don't care about it. The narrative doesn't appeal to me. But I can still appreciate the creativity. But it jumps around so much. We are constantly jumping from one character to the next. And it's so jarring. And I got a little bit of motion sickness constantly being thrown around. And it just is very sloppy. And I don't think that it works very well. That style might appeal to some people. Some people might like that choppy, chaotic style because it keeps them on their toes. And if that's the case, then that's absolutely fine. But for me personally, I really didn't like it. I was constantly jumping around between characters, and honestly, the characters didn't have that much to say that was particularly interesting. The performances were good, and knowing that it's an improv comedy, yeah, that is quite interesting. That does make it a little bit more interesting to watch. But had I not known that going into it, it was actually by chance that I read that, because I always pull up IMDb and Wikipedia before I start watching a film, but I very rarely look at them in any detail until afterwards. And it was just by chance that at the top of the screen that caught my attention. So that was something I could keep in mind when I was watching it. And that obviously made me think, which bits are improvised, what information have the actors been given beforehand, and that part of it I thought was quite fascinating. But had I not known that going into it, then obviously that wouldn't be there, that knowledge wouldn't be there, that fascination wouldn't be there, and it would just honestly be a bit of a chaotic and, in my opinion, dull story. Yes, if I liked poker, I might like it a little bit more, and I do think the characters are interesting. I do think they're very well written, and the performances are very good. But I think the structure of the narrative isn't great. The pacing, on the one hand, the pacing is great because we're constantly moving forward, constantly going at really fast speed. But at the same time, there are periods when we seem to be moving quickly, but not a lot is happening. And for me, not a lot is being said either. So sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. Ultimately, I applaud the creativity. And I think the performances are very good. And definitely the characters are very well written. But the narrative is just not that interesting for me. I don't like the structure of the narrative. I don't like that we're constantly jumping around. So do I recommend it? Yes, if you like poker or if you like any of the cast. I don't think the narrative is very strong. It has its moments, absolutely, but from start to finish, no. But if there's anything about this that appeals to you, sure, check it out. I didn't really care for it, but I can see the appeal with certain aspects. If it really appeals to you and you love it, fantastic. But for me, it was an interesting experience because there are some aspects that are different about it. But in general, I didn't come away from it feeling like I had particularly enjoyed it. And I will now mention the one thing that Wikipedia also told me that I do think is quite interesting. And again, this is something that I had going into it because just several things jumped out at me on the page. And this is the fact that the winner of the poker game had not been determined in the script, and that the winner would be whoever won the actual game they were playing on set. Which in itself, yes, that is quite interesting for two reasons. One, it means they were actually playing poker while filming it, and I have no idea what's going on. I really don't follow poker. But also the fact that the film's ending would be left to the players themselves, and that that must really raise the stakes for the actors if they want their character to win. So in that regard, it is fascinating. It doesn't necessarily make it more entertaining as a story, but as a creative film, yeah, I can see the appeal. I can see that there are aspects of this that maybe from an analytical perspective, if you want to study how effective this is as an approach to a film, not knowing how your film's going to end until you're playing the game on set is quite a gamble. And yeah, it's fascinating. It's still not entertaining as a story, but I guess as a film, then yes, maybe. So I don't love it. There are some okay aspects. It's certainly interesting in some ways, not necessarily as a narrative, but nevertheless, The Grand has its moments. And if there's anything about it that appeals to you, then maybe it's one that's worth checking out.